Hello, Thatcher. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. It's nice to be here.
Great. I have to tell you, when I first saw the book, I thought, how could there be a whole book on monotasking? And then I read it. It was excellent, really great descriptions and exercises and the scientific evidence. So thank you very much. I really appreciated it. So before we get started on the monotasking, I would like to ask you a question related to technology because it is scattered throughout the book, how it is a distraction in most areas. And so I'm wondering if first you can explain to our listeners what the attention economy is, because I think there may be some people who don't fully understand it.
That's a great question. We all live the same moment in time, right? Here we are in the 21st century. We're recording this on our devices. And we all carry these smartphones around that have all these, apps and, cool things that we think are made for us to communicate with other people and connect with them and be more productive and do our work and all that. And a lot of those apps and, the software and stuff are free. And I quote at least one or two times in the book from someone named Tristan Harris, who used to work at Google and has done a lot of thinking about the attention economy. And I think he runs something called the Center for Humane Technology. And he has a great saying in there, which is basically like, if you're not paying for the product, you are the product. And it's something that people don't realize, like your attention essentially is the product for a lot of companies that have grown very big and very powerful. And the attention you give them and their advertisers, the time spent on the app, the time you look at notifications, the time you use their software, like that has a monetary value. And essentially that is what the attention economy is. The economy, that people traditionally think of as the economy was more historically about goods and services that you purchased. So not everyone's aware like how valuable their attention is. To companies that want to kind of harvest it. And it's really valuable to us. And that's really what monotasking is about, is kind of like reclaiming our attention so that we know when it's being distracted and hijacked by companies, and we can put it towards what we want to put it towards, what's valuable to us, what we want to get done. Yeah.
Perfect. Yes, thank you, because I think that might help motivate people as we discuss monotasking, to set the device down sometimes, because I don't know if they realize how it's almost manipulative. I think it is manipulative, but these companies are trying to get you to stay on the devices, which then again tends to cause people not to monotask. Um, my my listeners are very familiar with my, I don't know, frequent reminders to stop trying to multitask.
Mhm.
And part of the reason for that is what you're going to cover. Part of it is because, from my perspective, monotasking is a very mindful practice, and it also helps build our mindfulness skills. So I wondered if you could discuss what neuroscience tells us now about multitasking and how it can negatively impact our well-being and our health.
So studies have been done about, whether people can actually multitask, and they basically all arrive at the same conclusion that only about 2% of people in the population can actually do two things at one time. There are different conceptions about multitasking, what it is, and different definitions of like background tasking versus task switching. And so the neuroscience around it essentially arrives at the conclusion that when you think you're multitasking, you're not multitasking, at least for 98% of the population. You're not actually doing two things cognitively. In background tasking, yes, you can fold the laundry while you listen to a podcast. And that's, no one's going to get hurt. You're not too much brain power is required for that laundry. It just becomes kind of a habit. And, on the other hand, when we try to do two things, like a lot of people are doing these days with working from home, being on a Zoom call while answering an email on the side and making their kids lunch over here and all those things. People can't do that. And not only do we make mistakes, but our work quality is less. We're less present in the conversations we're having and the relationships we have. And there's not as much work done on exactly what's going on with the neuroscience around it, but the studies all report like a general sense of feeling overwhelmed and like there's a cognitive bottleneck when we try to multitask. And it's hard to like put your finger on exactly why it's happening. But generally, when you think you're doing three things, you're not getting any of them done. And you feel stressed out about it. And so that's really, a large reason I wrote the book, was to kind of help navigate our way through that and bring some awareness to when we're multitasking and instead monotask. Things might take a little longer at first, but you'll feel better, and you'll do better work and be more present.
Absolutely. You get more done. I've been practicing monotasking for quite a while, but I kept a chart of how long my work days were before I did it and after. And I gained about 2 or 3 hours a day by switching to monotasking. So I am in complete agreement with you there.
I love hearing that. Yeah.
You make a correlation in the book between reading and meditation when it comes to our state of mind. So I was wondering if you could explain why reading is so good for us. And I should say for our listeners, reading is one of the tasks that you have in the book to learn how to monotask. But I really enjoyed that chapter about the effects of reading. So I was wondering if you could share that a little bit.
Absolutely. I love talking about reading. I love talking about books. My whole background for the past 20 years has been starting and evolving a business called Juniper Books. And we make book sets and we curate libraries around the world. I think a lot about why are books important? First of all, why have I dedicated 20 years to encouraging people to read and have books in their home? And one of the conclusions I came to a few years ago was that it's not just about the information in the books. It's not just about the entertainment value of a story. It's that when we give our full attention to the printed page, we get our attention back stronger, and then we can apply it to other parts of our life. And reading is one of the few things in this like digital overload world we live in that requires 100% of your attention. You can't do it if you're only half paying attention, right? If your mind wanders while you're reading, you have to go back and read it over. It's not like watching a movie where you can kind of half pay attention. So that, when I was thinking about the book at the beginning and thinking about this idea of monotasking, I was like, reading is a true monotask. Like, it requires you to pay attention fully. And what if we could bring that same level of attention to other activities in life and do them as if they were like reading? And the other monotasks are things like walking and listening, creating, playing, sleeping. And we'll talk more about some of those. But but it all started with reading, because I think it is a very meditative act. The studies that have been done on the benefits of reading, have shown that readers tend to live longer. They tend to have a calmer nervous system. For me, like, it really is one of the few things that just really grounds me if I'm stressed out, especially like if I don't have time to read. Like, that's when I really need to go sit down and read. And for me, it's very much like meditation.
Yeah, that is like meditation. Yeah, I found it really interesting because I'm an avid reader and I love a real book, paper and cover, and I had to come up with a system. I had too many books. So my novels or my pleasurable reading is on an iPad through Kindle, and then I have hardback or paperback books for work. I cannot keep my focus when it's on a screen. It's really interesting. So it doesn't matter if I'm just, I guess, reading a story for fun, but I cannot do it for work because I do have to go back and look at pages and reread a quote or reread a concept in order to really, get my mind into it. So I thought it was really interesting. So as you mentioned, you do provide very detailed explanations about monotasking, everything from walking to thinking to eating and sleeping in the book. But I'm wondering if you can share a few tips with our readers. Our readers, I'm talking about books, I'm thinking about reading. A few tips with our listeners today on how to get started, to applying monotasking in their day-to-day lives.
So the great thing about monotasking is you can really do it anywhere, anytime, and with whatever you're doing. The book goes into the 12 monotasks, which tend to be things we do sometimes every day, definitely, once a week. And the idea is to recognize, like, if this is not something you have to wait until you have some vacation time and can go, take a retreat, or something you're going to do after you get out of work. Like, you can do it at work for as little as, a moment or a few minutes. And so the book goes into, there's an exercise or two in each of the chapters. But like, as an example, when you go for a walk, you can leave if you feel comfortable leaving your phone physically behind, you can, or you can just leave it in your pocket. and resist the temptation to listen to music, or take it out and scroll through social media, or make a call, and really try to be present on your walk and see things you've never seen before, hear things you've never heard before. And that's monotasking. So monotasking, it's not just like productivity at the office, it's really mindfulness that you can practice anywhere you are.
Yeah, absolutely. I was fascinated as I went through because, as I said, I tend to monotask, but I really hadn't realized with a lot of my mindfulness practices that they are monotasking. I mean, just automatically it's built in that way. I find that it's very difficult to get people to really believe, because as I said, I've mentioned this many times in workshops and on the podcast, that our brains can't multitask. They task switch. And I try to give them images like, picture your brain smoking. It just cannot keep up with all those switches when you're trying to do 5 things at a time. But I've even had corporate executives say to me quietly, don't tell my staff that they can't multitask. And so I'm just wondering, what do you think it's that we've been just so conditioned to get more done in a day than is humanly possible that we cling to it thinking that's the answer?
Yeah, I mean, I think multitasking has been glorified, celebrated culturally, as like, if you can multitask, you're a hero. And, the most successful people are multitaskers. I don't think that's really the case. I mean, when I looked into it and I, look at people like Oprah Winfrey and Reese Witherspoon and Warren Buffett, you think they're, how could they possibly get everything done unless they were multitasking? But they also happen to be some of the biggest readers around, and I wanted to look into that correlation. Are they successful because they're readers, or are they successful and therefore they have time to read? Not really. I mean, I think they're able to, build their focus and ability to get things done by monotasking and by doing things like reading and doing more self-care. And yeah, I mean, I think these days, especially with social media and, everybody who's very involved in that, has like some fear of missing out. And all these people seem to be doing all these things and doing so well at it and having this great life. But, I think the reality at the end of the day is that, we're all human. Our brains work in pretty similar ways, and they're not built to multitask, no matter how much our computers that we, as humans designed can multitask. Like, that doesn't make us able to multitask. So, I think some of that has to be reversed, in terms of the cultural celebration of the multitaskers, and we should celebrate the monotaskers a little bit more. And I think we do. We just don't talk about it. Like, people like musicians and professional athletes, like, they're incredibly focused when they're doing their work. They can't be thinking about what happened yesterday and what, to do to this for tomorrow, and they can't have their phone in their pocket, while they're on stage playing, X number of people. So it's out there. It's just that, there's something about multitasking that like looks more interesting than, seeing one person do one thing.
Yeah.
But, I think we can change that.
Good. I hope so. Yeah, it's a delusion. Yes, I
Yeah.
keep trying to tell people, but it's not real. But yeah, I think that you really hit that on the head, because I think we've been conditioned to think that that is like a badge of honor, and so everyone brags about how well they can multitask. And in fact, as you mentioned, productivity goes down, error rates skyrocket. It's just not productive. Plus, you miss, I think, and I know you include this in the book too, but I believe in personal communications, you are then missing so much of what's being conveyed because you're trying to do something else at the same time, and that isn't good for relationships. It's not good
Mhm.
for conflict resolution. It's not really good for anything
Yeah.
when humans are trying to communicate with each other. So interesting. Um, okay, I was somewhat dismayed to read in the final chapter of the book that you believe our lives are only going to get busier. And while I wish that wasn't possible, I can't say I disagree with you. But is this why you think monotasking is the next frontier in wellness and productivity?
I do. So I describe in the book, a little bit about kind of the trajectory of, how we've gotten to the present moment, and what, may happen in the future. And I think, tying it back to what we talked about before with the attention economy, like the profit incentives are there to just get more of our attention, and not only to get our attention right now, but like to say, oh, actually, there's this moment isn't just this moment. There's 3 to 5 to 8 of these moments. And so I'm going to like sell all these ads and put them all, in front of you. And so that's what forces us to multitask, not just the ads, but like all the temptations to kind of jam pack our present moments. And I think so long as that's working and profitable for companies, the world is just going to get more and more distracting. And our devices are going to get more powerful. We've gone from seeing, 500 ads a day in the 1970s to about 10,000 advertisements a day right now. We can't even, I mean, if you tried to make a list of the 10,000, you wouldn't even know what you're seeing. Some of them are, very subliminal. So I think, businesses are just going to get more sophisticated about that. And so what we have to do is develop what I call our monotasking muscles, because nobody else is going to help us in the future besides ourselves, to be honest. And we need to develop the strength to navigate our way through this very distracting future, control our attention, decide who to give it to. We can decide, like, hey, we want to just tune out, rest on the couch, watch Netflix, keep a laptop open, have dinner in front of the TV. That's fine. Like if you consciously decide that. But there are other times when like you should be super present and, not have your phone out while you're eating and just focus on, does it taste good? Where did it come from? Who am I with? Can I have a conversation? Things like that. So I think it's really about, reclaiming our attention and that control by building up our monotasking muscles. And the way to build up your monotasking muscles is to do things like reading for 20 minutes a day would be great. Going for a walk, maybe 20 minutes as well. And even when you just do things that seem like they're super relaxing and you're not actually doing anything, like playing, like going to a concert or going for a run, like do that with your full attention. And if you do that, that's monotasking. That will strengthen your monotasking muscles and you'll be able to apply them back at work or in that, date when you go out for a date and have a conversation with somebody. And you'll notice things you never noticed before. And so I think, yeah, it's really important as we make our way into the future for all of us to do that.
I absolutely agree. Sometimes people misinterpret my behavior with technology as being anti-technology, and I'm not in any way. I just got this cute little flip phone, and I mean, I use technology, but I think one of the important lessons, and it really ties into this multitasking and being scattered and being mindless a lot, is that it really is a shift from, and that's why I asked you to explain the attention economy. It's a shift from, or it's a shift to recognizing that those distractions are someone or something else demanding your attention instead of you driving when you want to use something. So I have no notifications on my phone. I may not see a text message, for a whole hour or two, and then I'll notice that it's there and then I'll respond. But even the notification distractions, that's monotasking. If you're trying to work on something or read something and you hear a ding or a blip or a little
Mhm.
tune, it's pulling your attention away. And so I really want listeners to think about that. You can use your device all you want. If it's what you want to do and you use it for work, you use it for pleasure, but make it where you're using it because you've decided you want to, not because you're bored and there's all these flashy bells and whistles drawing you in. And then, of course, as you mentioned, the horrific amount of ads. And it's to me, it's really a subtle form of not brainwashing, but I guess someone else trying to control our minds because they spend a lot of
Mhm.
money on psychologists to figure out how to get us to keep looking at that,
Mhm.
even when we're doing other things. So I really appreciate that insight.
Yeah, no, I think you described it perfectly. And, we feel like we're getting something for the value, the time we put into our devices and our technology and whatever. But if you really think about that in terms of that equation, like, am I really getting more than I'm giving?
Right.
And the two things that are very limited in our lives are time and attention. And we should be judicious about how we give them away and put them to things that are valuable to us and to the people we love and care about and the things that we really want to get done in life, and not just like be like, oh, this is pretty, and bells and whistles and flashy objects and all that. Like, therefore, it gets my attention. I think we could be a little more controlling of where we give it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess I would ask, because a lot of people are addicted to their devices or technology, whatever it is. And so if they decided to make this kind of a change, I can imagine that it might feel boring, like to take a
Mhm.
walk and not look at your phone the whole time you're walking, or sit, observe something. Seeing is one of the tasks to monotask. And so, do you have any advice for someone? Because I know you previously attempted in an earlier life to be a multitasker. Do you have any advice for listeners and how to make that transition? Like, what did you do the first few times when you felt, bored just doing one thing?
Yeah, boredom's like a real thing. And I think we're not, you know, maybe I grew up and, we grew up in an era when like it was okay to be bored and you like went and invented a game to play or some imaginative story or went and read a book. Like, but these days, like we don't have to be bored anymore. If you go to a restaurant, you're waiting for your food, you're bored, you take out your phone. Like you don't
Right.
have to strike up a conversation with the person next to you. So I recognize that it's hard and it's something that people just aren't familiar with. I have two kids that are basically teenagers and like they don't really know how to be bored. We're working on it. um, but so all there are 12 monotasks in the book. Like they're not necessarily going to appeal to everybody, and some people might be like, "This one's boring," or "I can't do it right away." But for what we're talking about here, like a couple of them that might be really good are the playing monotask and the sleeping monotask, and or maybe the creating one too. And we'll talk about sleep for a second. Sleep is something we all need more rest and more sleep. Like we're just kind of overwhelmed with our to-do lists and just the pressure to always be doing more and making more money, and traveling is maybe exhausting, commuting, all those things. And so if you just think about like I could use an extra hour of sleep, how do I get that extra hour of like good quality sleep? If you monotask it, you really do two things. So you're thinking about during the day, like, okay, what time am I going to go to bed? Does that give me enough time to get 7 or 8 hours of sleep for the wake up time, which tends to be more fixed for getting to work and things like that, for getting your kids to school? And then, can I set up my bedroom to be more comfortable? I sleep like basically in a pillow fort with all these pillows around me that wedge me in. Some people have a weighted blanket. I like the pillows around me. And I only figured this out essentially by monotasking my sleep. So I have to like come up with some tips and tricks that work for me, and other people will find the ones that work for them. You got to think about it while you're wide awake during the day. And then at night, I like to keep my phone in the other room. So I don't use it when I'm going to bed. I don't reach for it in the middle of the night if I do wake up. It's not the first thing I do in the morning. And that, all those things collectively help me get like 90 minutes more sleep. And it's better quality sleep. So that's monotasking. Like you don't have to, we all have to sleep every day. You don't have a choice of that. So if you have a problem with like being bored with some of the other monotasks, like that might be a really good one to start with.
Excellent. Yeah, and another, again, because monotasking is so intertwined with mindfulness, um, a lot of times what I recommend to people, first of all, they're going to go through an adjustment period, right? Because it's a change. But boredom can be another mindfulness practice, just to, instead of getting upset that you're bored, use it as a learning opportunity to what happens when you're bored, what happens in your body, what happens in your mind. What does it feel like to be slightly uncomfortable? Boredom doesn't hurt. It
Mm-hmm.
just feels uncomfortable. So you can use that as an opportunity too to build your mindfulness skills, which is paying attention to what's going on. And consider the habitual patterns related to the
Mm-hmm.
devices. Because again, I'm not anti-technology. I just think I don't think they're not smartphones. I say this all the time. They're just devices. Only we can be smart. So if you use that device to help you build monotasking skills, then
Mm-hmm.
great, right? Keep building that practice.
Yeah, sorry.
Oh, go
I
ahead.
say, I'm not anti-technology. I'm pro paying attention.
Yes,
Um, and and even if you're paying attention to your boredom, that's paying attention.
exactly. Oh, that's
Yeah.
true. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, I really, again, enjoyed the book and I appreciate your time today. Can you let listeners know where they can learn more about you or and the book? And I believe you have a tips website for people that are
Yeah,
trying to learn to monotask.
yeah. So I created a website called monotasking.tips. So it ends in .tips. And it's basically meant to be a companion to the book, the 12 monotasks, do one thing at a time to do everything better. And there's a bunch of links from there to order the book at different bookstores and online. And then there's also, I'll be adding more, information to the blog about, here are some apps that might be helpful for, limiting your device usage. And here are some studies that have come out and things like that related to mindfulness and monotasking. So definitely check in there. It's a good way to keep in touch.
Excellent. Well, I thank you for writing the book because I think it's a necessity in life at this point. I don't know how much more people can take being scattered, in 50 directions at once. So this is a great guide to get you back on track. And it does help you do things better. So if you don't believe it at first, just try one of the exercises and start to notice the difference. And then I think you'll be sold. So thank you
Well,
so much for joining us today.
thank you for having me on. Really appreciate it. It was a fun conversation.
Great. Thank you.